Hello and welcome to this very special session of panel discussion on enhancing safety and mobility through connected vehicle technology. This very special panel discussion, which as part of the third Auto Connected Vehicle Summit. It's my pleasure and honor to be the moderator of this session. So once again, I welcome you all. Welcome to all esteemed panelists. Dr. Seshu Bhagavatula, Director of Volta Trucks, who joins us from Stuttgart. This time, Dr. Seshu, I didn't wake you up too early, so glad that the session timing was also convenient for you.
Thank you.
Mr. C.V. Raman, Chief Technology Officer and Senior Executive Director, Engineering at Maruti Suzuki, which everyone knows is the market leader in the Indian passenger vehicle industry by a big margin. We have the Director of Automotive Research Association of India, Dr. Reji Mathai. Welcome, Dr. Mathai. Mr. Ashish Bhatia, he's the Regional Head for Vistion. And so once again, Ashish, welcome to this very special session. And last but not the least, Sagar Apte, who is a startup founder by the name of Car IQ, which is now a part of Tier 1 major Valor Group. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your participation in this very special panel discussion, the theme of which, as I mentioned, is improving safety and mobility through connected vehicle technology. And any discussion around technology is always interesting, and more so when there are technocrats in the panel, representative of government agencies in the panel, global tier ones, car majors, as well as emerging startups, and who are coming up with some very innovative solutions and collaborating with tier ones and OEMs. So without further ado, over the next hour or so, we are going to have a very insightful discussion for sure. To all attendees, I would invite your questions as and when you would like to pose them. We would take it up towards the end of this session. So to start off with, if I may ask Mr. Raman to briefly, very crisply share his thoughts on what has been the adoption rate and what is the prospect he sees for the connected vehicle technology, especially in terms of the influence it can have on making vehicles safer, mobility safer in India, which, as we all know, has a dubious distinction of topping the list of countries with the highest number of road fatalities. Mr. Raman?
Yeah, so good afternoon, Sumanta-san. Good afternoon, my esteemed panelists. Thank you very much for having me here today. I think there are, societal shifts which are happening today as we see. We are in the backdrop of the COP26 and the climate change and environment degradation is topmost priority. Demographic trends and population changes, variance which is there across the world, especially in India, from an India context, the demographic and the divide which is we see, rapid urbanization which we see, digital technologies, the adoption of mobile phones and the rising middle class, the aspirations levels. These are some of the things which we see are the mega trends which are shaping and which are going to shape in future the mobility space, so to speak. So from whatever the digital influence, if you saw the Facebook and WhatsApp, the way it was adopted, the technology has enabled that happens much faster than what it was happening earlier. And today, as you see, we see that even happening even more faster. And from a customer perspective, because India is the second largest smartphone user after China, also from the internet usage, I think Indian customer is totally connected. Also, the COVID pandemic has also changed the way in which Indian consumers, our behavior is changing. Everything is going online. Everything is going digital payments. So I think there's a lot of change which has happened as far as India is concerned. And coming back to vehicles, world over, it's the ACEs is always being talked about, which is autonomous, connected, electric, and shared. But from an Indian context, if you look at, there's always connected and shared mobility, environment-friendly technologies, shared and comfort and convenience, and affordable technologies are something which is, I think, always important. So from that perspective, I think there is this change, and also from the infrastructure perspective, if you see the smart cities, the way it is being now envisaged by the government, the IoT which is coming in, so that is something which is going to drive. And if you look at various use cases today, consumer is looking at vehicle as an extension of his home. And so whatever is the comfort and the way in which he is the IoT enabled houses which they have got, they would like to have the same kind of connectivity going forward into their vehicles also. But the other important aspect is that there is a lot of and Sumatra san talked about, it touched on the topic of safety. I think safety is also very, very important, and how the connectivity can enable safety in a way for the customer is very, very important, not just in terms of getting information through telematics solutions and connecting to the infrastructure, but also enabling post crash environment where they can be some kind of aid to the injured or to the crash victims. How quickly we can do that, how we can enable that, I think this is something which I believe is one big area which we can I think India needs to work on. And of course, as we see the technology progression in India, there is a lot of change which is happening, and you see many of these technologies coming into India, and advanced technologies are also being now talked about. And all of this, in some way or the another, is talking about connected vehicle. So I think this is the way India is going to progress, and digital is going to be a big enabler going forward.
Very well summed up, Raman San. Let me get a slightly global perspective also. Dr. Seshu, for those who may not be aware, Dr. Seshu is a veteran in the industry who started his career in Daimler, and then he was responsible for setting up the Mercedes-Benz R&D center in India, which today happens to be the largest R&D center outside of Germany for the huge organization. And then he had a very long stint at Ashok Leyland. Also, now he is the director at Volta Trucks, which is set to launch their all-electric trucks for use, and I guess vans also, right, Dr. Seshu? So, in terms of leveraging connected technology to enhance safety in mobility, it becomes all the more challenging, right? When you have the vehicles with those technology plying in urban centers as compared to on the highways.
Yes, absolutely. No, you took away the thunder, as you say. These batteries could be, if safety is not properly thought over, these could be bombs just running in the downtown area. So you have to be really careful in designing those trucks, especially those that run in the downtown areas, the last mile. That's what Sumatra, you've been saying. On the other things, on the topic of today, let me give you some of the things I have gone through over the years. We spent in, when I was, I'm talking about 1991, when I joined Daimler-Benz here in Stuttgart, in Germany. We already had first issues of how do we reduce the whole concept was on reduce the accident, so you spend most of your energy and time on reduction part, so to avoid it. But then we said, okay, that I'm on putting a strategy in place. Then we said, well, accidents still happen for whatever reason. So what do you do actually, as Mr. saying post-crash strategy. What do you do? So we divided the whole safety into three portions. One is pre-crash, at the time of the crash, and post-crash. So we modeled in very much detail on what is all required for the pre-crash. We spent all our time on the pre-crash part so that the next two don't happen. So at the time of the crash, so you can imagine pre-crash, all that we have done later on was part of pre-crash. We said, let's put a radar system that gives you the distance to the car in front of you. Then we said, while parking, you're hitting someone at the back. Why don't you put a camera or maybe an infrared sensor or an acoustic sensor? And then you're hitting another vehicle. So why don't we look at blind spot? Driver can look on the left side and right side, but there is still a blind spot. So we need some help. Then we said, let's put a radar there, maybe a camera there. And then, so then we said, what's the braking distance at each speed level you have? Then we said, you require probably a long range radar, a mid range radar, and a short range radar. So all of them actually came because of the detailed strategy on the pre-crash. Now, we also recognized at some point or the other, accidents still do happen. So when a sensor, all the sensors are saying responsible for crash identification, they're saying, now crash is imminent. Now, what do you do? That's where we, when I say we, not me alone, I'm talking about the industry itself, came up with these two ideas called active safety and passive safety. Now we said, first thing is we've recognized the driver would, at impact, driver would actually, fall in front, and there are protruding things that come out, from the front portion of the car. Now we did a lot of research on the protruding parts to reduce them. The airbag came in picture, and then we said, seat belts should be, tightened. And we would also, so advanced systems were like, what's the co-passenger doing? Is there a kid in the vehicle? So airbag in front of the kid will be told to signal, you don't take off, and all that, it's too detailed, but at this stage you recognize the way we developed the strategy in those days. I'm talking, when I say, again, we meant the industry, across the triad regions like United States, Europe, and Japan were initially quite a bit of, advanced stage, and today everywhere. Now we said, okay, this is something that a vehicle is doing on its own. But then what if there is some danger a kilometer away from me, for which we required something outside of my capability of the vehicle that has all the sensors? Then we said we require this car to be connected to something outside of the car that tells me something is happening a kilometer before me. Now that's where we said connectivity is required. Now post-crash, as I said, pre-crash, post-crash, and at the time of post-crash, we said, what's the situation of what's happening? Can the driver still talk? Now that's where we had this e-call, the emergency call came in. We had a SIM card inside the vehicle, and it was put in a place that survived the crash. And we looked for places, we secured that place from all kinds of extra G powers that actually get involved when we have an accident. And then we put a voice call, and then if the driver could speak, that was good enough, he could give the situation. And if the driver couldn't speak, then we started putting a few mechanisms in place, like map matching and telling a service center, send help. Now, this all required connectivity. The title of today's talk was basically improving the safety and the mobility through connected vehicles. So I'm actually giving you the thought process that went into these technologies for which today there's a great deal of work done, and there's still a lot to be done. When I talk of, let's say, I talked quite a bit about the safety, but let me also take you through improving the mobility. When we talk of mobility in this part of the world, we talk of intermodal or multimodal. You take a taxi or you take a bicycle, you walk down to the nearby bus stop or a train station, underground train station, and then you need to know when exactly is the train coming there. And this train takes you to a bigger railway station. You go under this railway station, and then just go up and take a bigger train to next airport, and all the way, then once you land wherever you land, all the way to the door, door to door. This is a multimodal, and it requires a lot of connectivity. It requires a lot of connectivity. And at the end of the day, the business models, if you look at them, they're all looking at, can you give one bill for this whole thing from door to door? Now, what is required to give one bill to the customer? But again, that's a business point of view. Today, we're more on the safety and the mobility. Mobility, as Mr. Raman also said, the CASE, the connected, autonomous, electric, and shared ones, and all of them require connectivity. If you look at B2C, the passenger car, or B2B, the trucks, the B2B are probably a little more complex because you've got a fleet owner, right? And you've got a driver, and you've got the customer who actually receives the goods, and you've got individual owners, so all of them require some kind of a connectivity, and the connectivity needs are different. Fleet owner needs are, he says, how he looks at the fleets, looking at optimization, or what's consumption, fuel consumption, or battery consumption for electric vehicles. And the driver's things are more to do with, is there a traffic jam? Can I get to the right time to he's got different needs. As an OEM who develops these electric or normal commercial vehicles, my interest is durability. How are my parts doing? Now, the customer, who gets the goods, his thing is, do I have a parking place in front of me, or do I have to carry them, a half a kilometer to get to me? So you see, the needs are different. All of them require connectivity, and once you define them, you know what is to be solved. So at this, I'll stop for a few minutes here and give it over to Sumantra back. Thank you.
Thank you for kind of giving us a kind of backdrop of the evolution of the connected vehicle tech and how it is the focus on safety or safer mobility. And now with this multimodal mobility solution, which is absolutely critical and will enhance mobility, and for that connectivity is very critical. In fact, Raman-san, while Dr. Sesh was talking about the multimodal example, I was also remembering is a similar case in Japan also, right? Which you experience every time you go there. In one, it's very seamless.
It's a seamless connectivity. You go from point A to point B, and you have one payment system. Everything works, and you can actually go from point A to point B in the stipulated time, using by walk, by bus, metro, taxi, and the combination. I think it's amazing, and I think there are experiments which are being done in India too, and I understand in city of Ahmedabad, such a multimodal transport model is being envisaged, and some work is happening on this already. I think, and that's something which is very, very important for a country like India.
In fact, there was a discussion about this one card multimodal transport service. Yeah. Dr. Mathai, now I would like to get you in here as someone who heads ARAI, and a government body under the Ministry of Heavy Industries. You play a key role in the overall technology development role also, and not to mention the role you have in regulations. In this evolution of the new megatrend of connected vehicles, how do you see it progressing? And in terms of its scope of influencing the safety quotient of mobility in India, as well as safer vehicles, what are your thoughts on how it could proceed? And at ARAI, are you kind of how are you kind of guiding the government on this aspect?
I think some of the aspects like the connected vehicles and the communications part are reaching us before we are almost prepared at the regulatory end. Means this is something that we have been now started observing. Normally in our homologation part, when we ask the vehicle manufacturer to list out what are the features that you want this to be tested, and we also ask is there any additional feature you want to comment upon? Because there are certifying portions in there, and there are some things that are not certifying, but the vehicle manufacturer can declare. And we believe that as many of these vehicles are coming into the market now, because with facilities and features, at our end, we are still not ready on many of those as of now. To evaluate them, to assess them, and to say that they are seamlessly being integrated to the system. As both the speakers before me was mentioning, see, this adds a lot of value to the whole customer. The recent example is a two-wheeler, because see, the two-wheeler segment is nobody touches abroad also, because this is only India specific. And we have seen what I can say, and total evolution means unprecedented growth in the way the connected vehicles are being admired in the two-wheeler segment, or any sort of communication with the owner is being done. And people are willing to shell out up to 10% of the cost of the vehicle easily, just to see that they understand where the vehicle is going and what it is happening, and it is accessible to them. And there is a communication between them and the vehicle, sort of a thing. And this value proposition is a huge one, which we need to channelize in a much better way. Coming to the safety side, I think there is no two thoughts about it. Yeah, this is a very beneficial one. We have almost thinking about how the connected vehicles and all that. So the regulatory aspects are being put into place. Now there is a AIS panels working on it. The Automotive Industry Standards panel started working on it, and we are trying to speed it up so that things are in place, so that like AEBS and all that are there, and we are ready for it when they are introduced in the market. But what I want to have more discussions or more thought process is how secure are our systems that we are putting into place. See, the cybersecurity is going to be one of the key areas where we need to dwell a little more on, and where the responsibility has to be fixed or needs to be identified, so that the systems we are putting into place are used for its end result, rather than there is something happening. Convenience is one part, as we all discussed, and like over-the-air updates. This is another area that the manufacturer finds it very good for him. Any technical small tuning or updates he has to do, it is very easy. But it has to be very responsibly also to be done. So it has got a balance to be followed. So as a regulator, we also really want all the stakeholders to come together, so that we put forward to the government the right picture, the right methods to be applied, or the right solutions to be put forward, so that we can implement them. And it is a win-win solution for all.
Okay. And you touched upon the two-wheeler sector, and rightly said, Dr. Mathai, given the size of the Indian two-wheeler industry, which is currently the world's largest, the impact, the positive impact with the help of technology it can make is also commensurate to its scale. And also talking about safety, as we all know, in terms of if you slide down the numbers of road fatalities, two-wheelers form the largest portion. So indeed, that technology intervention can help influence safer mobility as well, as of course enhance the connectivity and therefore the resultant convenience and other features. But in terms of regulations, as you mentioned, you are currently kind of contemplating or discussing regulations related to AB and things like that. Also, from a connected features, will there be any other regulatory interventions or kind of guidelines?
As of now, we are still have to really evaluate the matter. Means what exactly we need to assess. See, the regulatory mechanism needs the assessment model and objectivity to be brought into it. So how to assess that is a critical aspect that we are looking into. Means this is some challenge that we have, because abroad also the cybersecurity part and the ISO 26262 and all those does not go into that specific. So should India get into that specifics, or should that India be given that freedom to let people to explore, and the broader contours being finalized by the regulatory authority? So these are times then when we are also exploring. So we are not very clear on how to move ahead on many of these aspects. But I think as time evolves, maybe a few more months or a few more meetings, we will be a little more clarity will come in. But the end result, we want that it should give comfort, and it should give the end result that it is intended for. That should be met. And it has not, we need not be a hurdle to that. That is the one thing we are very clear about.
Right. I mean, facilitator will be the right role, and indeed, the end objective has to be very, very valuable. Let me bring in Ashish there. Ashish, you not only represent a global organization, but you also head one of the very key global technical centers of Visteon. Tell us in terms of the focus, what are the key focus areas, where when your team, the engineering team, develops many of these connected vehicle features, not necessarily only for Indian market, but for global markets as well.
Sure. Thank you, Sumantra. So I think you asked a very relevant question, and what we are seeing is the way we have all seen telecommunication, right? There was a good old fixed line phone, then we had pager, mobile phone, and now we have the smartphone, right? So I think even if we look at the automobile, it is going through a similar cycle, right? So we had the good old vehicle where everything important was under the hood and on the good refined engine, transmission. And then electronics started penetrating, and then there was sudden growth of electronics into that. And now what we see is more or less like a smart car, right? So as Raman-san said, right, the people who are the consumers, the buyers of this vehicle, they are looking at the car as their next extended living space. And who are these people, right? The today's buyers, the OEMs and the tier ones, they know that the buyers are the generation of people who are able to relate themselves to a mobile phone. They are able to connect to a mobile phone. So anything that offers them a mobile phone-like experience or a consumer electronics-like experience, that is something they would love to interact to. So the buying decisions, right, are gradually shifting. As we say, the battleground is moving from under the hood to the cockpit, right? So that is driving the buying decisions. So what is this driving? This is really driving all the mega trends around the connected and ACE and CASE and all, right? So, but to answer your question, right, as this tech center and what are the projects that we are doing in India and globally, and frankly, I do not see too much of a difference between the content and the complexity of the products that we are selling now in India or even globally. And the trend that we are seeing is that there is a consumer that is now expecting this smart car, this moving mobile phone on 4 wheels, right? They are expecting that to be having features, let's say over-the-air update, right? So they want the whole car to be upgraded, right? So that is some of those features. Then you could have like the music system has become no longer an entertainment system. It is an infotainment system. It is able to offer information through data, through other sources of the vehicle. But there is a next level now, the expectation, right? You need an app store on the infotainment screen so that you are able to connect and communicate. This gives a very fantastic value proposition to both the OEMs, to the consumers, and the third parties, because now you're creating an ecosystem of how you can generate a revenue stream. So our earlier approach of, let's say, I want to design a product for SOP has now changed, right? I now have to design a product not for start of production. I have to design a product for the entire life of the vehicle, because now there is an interaction between these multiple parties, and there is a revenue stream. So that completely creates a new opportunity. So to sum it up, I would say that the conventional distributed devices, now I'm speaking as Visteon being the global leader in cockpit electronics. So from a Visteon point of view or a cockpit electronics point of view, to sum it up, I would say that let's say the old instrument cluster, which had the gauges and dials, has upgraded to a completely digital, reconfigurable digital cluster. Right? The music system, which was entertainment, has become infotainment and is connected and is able to deliver data. But now we are seeing the next step. The next step is there is the convergence of these devices into the individual ECUs are now becoming like domain ECUs, because then you are able to have the right compute power that is able to not only manage and control these individual devices, but it actually takes your vehicle platform to the next level, where it is able to offer a complete roadmap of features, right? You can have like other things I said, OTA, App Store, and many other things. So the domain computing, is the next step that we are seeing in terms of the cockpit electronics.
Okay, then let me now bring in Sagar. Sagar, the fact that Car IQ as a startup was offering value solutions is quite clear by the fact that a group like Varroc got integrated with Varroc, and Varroc saw value in Car IQ. So I mean, as I know, you were really kind of plugging into the car and kind of reading all the data and mining the data for value-added services. So now that you becoming a part of a tier 1 major, how do you enhance the value proposition in terms of connected vehicle solutions? And are there any kind of aspect of it which could enhance the safety part of the automobile or overall mobility?
Yeah, okay, thanks. Yeah, absolutely. So we've been doing connected cars for almost a decade now, started almost 10 years back. And we've seen shifts, right, happening in the last 10 years. Initially, when we started, unfortunately, connected cars was more to find out who was the fastest driver. I mean, most of our users were using it to say, or to put it up on Facebook that I recorded 120 kilometers per hour speed on the highways and stuff like that, right? That's how it all started, at least from a user's standpoint, user perspective, right? But in the last 3-4 years, we've seen a huge shift in the user's psyche. They are no longer talking about vanity factors, but they are genuinely trying to understand how they drive, what are the road conditions, what are the safe areas, and there's so much information that one can glean out of vehicles and be able to provide back to the end users, right? And in fact, it was always the goal, right? The goal was for Car IQ was to study with a set of customers, that was the B2C, and then eventually go to the source, go to the OEMs and present that as an extension that we understand the connected car better, because we've worked with car owners for a meaningful period, and hence get back to OEMs with all the learnings that has been accumulated in the last 10 years, working hands-on. And being a startup, you get access to the vehicle owners much more than a larger company would, right? We've spent on drives, we've done all sorts of things to learn user behavior and bring inputs from there. And we've seen a lot of changes happen there from a safety, security standpoint. But one thing that has kind of also come to the forefront along all this is the idea of privacy, right? So it's very different for a commercial vehicle from a passenger vehicle. So how do you differentiate that they are in an accident case and the regular normal privacy has to be overrun and a security feature needs to be implemented, right? Because I as an end user might get into my app and say, I do not want to be tracked anymore. But if there's a serious condition, should I listen to his choice, or should I now override that choice and get emergency services in to help him out? And those are some of the interesting things that a platform is able to address at scale. And that's something pretty interesting, other than most of the points that were already made, like over the air and safety indexes and everything. That's definitely still there too.
Let me come back to Raman-san. Raman-san, perhaps with or without connected vehicle technology, I mean, a player like of Maruti's size and its reach, I think you gained a lot of data of a market and consumers. So tell us, I mean, how has been the response from the consumer side in terms of adoption of the connected vehicle technologies? And also, another part of the question is, how can this connected vehicle megatrend be leveraged to make mobility safer in India? And while doing that, also maybe help the customer enhance his or her awareness about safety.
Yeah. So I think that's very important, and both the questions are very important. And so first of all, on the, as far as our experience from the customer and from the connected feature is concerned, we've already launched the Suzuki Connect, which has various functions like tracking and sharing of the location, e-call, and and also about geofencing. One thing which we found as a very interesting example was about the tow-away alert. In India, the parking issue is there, and people park it and the vehicle gets towed away. So the tow-away alert and the tow-away, tracking of that is something which we are looking at. Of course, fuel level, and such status of the battery, etc., etc. All these are something which are being looked at. Now, I think there are two things which are important in this. And moving to the second part of the question, one is that, of course, these features are liked, but what is important for today's customer is that what exactly is the value which is, is the customer getting out of this. And so, the third-party apps, and so as was discussed, and I think Mr. Bhatia mentioned this topic about, the infotainment system and the third-party app, development. I think we as, Maruti Suzuki, we have a Suzuki Connect. Now, the Suzuki Connect is giving all this information. What it can give further is that whatever is the data which is coming out from the vehicle, how that is stored, how that is analyzed, and what kind of predictive maintenance tips which can be given to the customer, apart from, of course, driving behavior, geofencing, and so on and so forth, which is more geospatial, more geographic, kind of a thing. But predictive maintenance and kind of giving information about when the customer should go for what kind of review is something which is important. Also, it helps automakers to build in more reliability and durability based on this data which you are able to actually get. So I think that is a very, very important. And because today's customer is connected and all this is happening through the smartphone. Now, the smartphone has got these apps, and it's actually, today mind-boggling for anybody who uses a lot of digital to actually handle this. So when we, go into that, there is one more app which you need to do. Now, integration of app and how can you make that, make more value for that customer. One click and you are able to do more is something which the customer would look for. And so then that would mean collaborating, and collaborating not just with the third-party app providers and other system providers, but also now going forward to the smart connected cities which are going to come up, where there is a lot of this information which you need to go get on the go to help you to do certain things and to enable you for your comfort and convenience in terms of mobility or in terms of safety and so on and so forth. So I think these are some things, that integration is something which is going to be there. And of course, also it is going to be the monetization. Next step is going to be the monetization bit of this is something which is going to be also very, very important. And the other part which Mr. Apte mentioned was about the privacy. I think that's something which is going to be of paramount significance. Today, everybody says, I accept and I agree, and the app will go ahead. But then, going forward, this, the way in which the consumer usage which is there, and the way which is information is going to go, actually you're going to go get a lot more information about the customer. Today, which the customer does not understand. Once he starts understanding, he's going to start questioning, and then there is going to be, these privacy issues. How that is going to be taken care of is important. And the last thing which I would like to mention here is, and I still believe this is, and something which India needs to do is going to be about e-call. When we did our Suzuki Connect system, we tried to have an e-call system, but the e-call we were able to do to our service centers. Service center would, give a message or call the next of the whosoever was accident victim, or And in case of emergency, that call number used to be called and information used to go. Information also used to go to the service center with the location. But I think more important is how can we provide medical support to the accident victim and that is something which is very, very important. And I'm sure, and I think that in other countries, developed countries, this system of e-call, which Mr. Dr. Bhagta talked about, I think is very, very strong. That is something I think is very, very important for India to be able to map all the centers which are there, medical centers, the ambulance care. How can you transport the victim very, very quickly so that he can get the necessary medical support to save the victim? I think this is very, very key, because those golden hours, that is very, very important. And connectivity can actually enable you to do this. I think that can save a lot of the fatalities, is what I believe. Also, of course, as Dr. Bhaktil also talked about, there's a lot of information which is going to be there. They could also be, one of the things is that how customer is driving, and the driving behavior also is an important aspect. And tiredness of while driving is also one important aspect. And camera inside the cabin can actually detect some of these things and give support to the customer. So there's a lot of use cases which are there. These all need to be built in, and I believe that this is something which we all need to which I believe are going to come in. But some of these things we need to do much more faster than what is happening, because the infrastructure, because it's all about co-creation and collaboration today. And that's how this space is going to get developed. And that's very, very important.
You touched upon collaboration, you touched upon the infrastructure. Before that, I was curious, instead of, let's say, that call being made, that e-call being made to the call center, why can it also be designed to based on the GPS information of the vehicle? Can it be designed to make the call instead of the call center, or maybe simultaneously to the call center as well as to the nearest medical center or hospital?
Yeah. Very good question. And that's where the challenge is, that it has to be integrated, one number across India, which is connected and which will actually answer that call and give the necessary relief. And that's where I think that needs to be built. That infrastructure needs to be built, because we are not connected on that way. Right. And because it's again also about the responsibility. Who would take the responsibility? In some way, when this accident happens, whether it was quickly it was given or not given also becomes a point of discussion. And that will happen later. But, but we need to envisage that and ensure that that also happens in a way.
Yeah. And as I observe it, connected vehicle megatrend or connected vehicle technology is not necessarily only about packaging those, offering those technology at the vehicle end. It's also the infrastructure is also equally important.
Absolutely. Finding a parking slot, finding in the city is one use case which is there, and where to go. And this connectivity can actually support it. But then you need to collaborate with the parking lot owners, or the whosoever is controlling it, or the city in a way. Those kind of things also need to be done. And so that's why I say that it has to be a collaborative, co-created effort.
Collaboration, co-creation, and the ecosystem. Dr. Seshu, just wanted to get your perspective, since you have you live in a very matured automotive market. You have an experience of both global organizations as well as Indian organizations. You know the Indian scenario, the infrastructure. How can the conducive ecosystem being, what are the requirements to build a conducive ecosystem in a market like India, so that the connected vehicle megatrend can be leveraged or utilized to its full potential, with a strong kind of influence on enhancing mobility also?
Yeah. I mean, it's a mega task, naturally. You can imagine, as Ramanson said, first thing is to agree on one number. That's a very important thing, right? And in a nation with so many cell phone people, you can imagine handover is going to be technically very challenging. And it also requires that the network is available everywhere. Imagine if an accident takes place in a place where there is no coverage. We had gone through that in my previous job when I was working with the Indian second largest commercial vehicle manufacturer. We had a telematics box since 2000, beginning of 2019. It was given free of charge in every vehicle because we said there's no one ready to pay for it. So let's put it free of charge and then start collecting data. And they will one day see the advantage of it and probably start getting some money for paying money for services, But that's a different discussion. So that's where we recognized we weren't actually getting the data. Data was sporadic. The bandwidth was not guaranteed, and every time there was a handover from one to another one, we had issues. There were so many issues you can imagine. On the technical level, we are not yet there. At the back, we also require lots of standards to be agreed on. For example, as Ramanson was hinting as well, now an accident takes place somewhere in the middle of Bihar, right? Let's put it. And which is the nearest hospital? Who would know about it? Now, and I can, the map matching takes place, that's today no big issue at all. And we had much more issues, by the way, in the early 90s. We did experiments here as, again, it's a very mature market, right? So I still remember I was responsible for telematics for global strategy for Daimler Chrysler in those days. So I remember, deep in the night discussions on saving those 10 people we lost. Why did we lose them? Because in those days, the GPS was not as good as it is today, the differential GPS and so on. So, and it was night, it was snowing, it was dark, it was minus 10 degrees temperature, and there was the occupant couldn't talk to us. So that means, so helicopter had to go. Now the helicopter landed on the opposite side of the highway, and it was too late for them to actually take off, and we lost people because of these 7 minutes. These 7 minutes, So then we said, so that's where the whole concentration was. How can we even reduce the 7 minutes to 1 minute, maybe? We came up with lots of ideas, and there was a broadcasting system put in place, and we also had we call the blood group of the person. Though typically the 4 people who would use the vehicle, and we brought the right blood to the place, and so on. Now, India is far ahead, far from that. But again, your question is related to India. There need to be standards. Definitely, there are lots of standards to be agreed upon so that the information flows through different places. Again, if e-call does not go to a particular place if you don't agree on one number, right? And nearby hospital, and the hospital has to have you need to keep the right number. They keep changing the numbers. Now, I just want to give you only the problems. When you describe the problem properly, then you also have a solution. That's how you work on. And imagine, there is again, telephone number changed, and the hospital just has a second. In India, the hospitals grow so big that across the street you've got another building with the same thing. So there has to be agreed on lots of standards. And one of the first things that needs to happen is to agree on handover part. In the sense, you need to use those bits in a GSM signal that are independent of the network providers, so that SMS. There are others as well. There are some bits that need to be used, and I'm sure Dr. Mathai would be the right person to. They must be already looking at those things, and we had these problems. Every time, for example, the car was on the Swiss borders between Germany and Switzerland, it was sometimes logging into Switzerland. Sometimes it's logging into Germany. We had all these problems, but we solved them on the European level. So India is bigger than Europe, so that requires. But once that's solved, go ahead.
Any lessons that can be taken from those learnings in Europe, which perhaps may be applicable with a little tweaking maybe in India?
It's again, yeah, absolutely. It's all standardization. What happens in an accident? For safety, it all means lots of things have to talk to each other. So that means for talking, you require something that goes through all these systems, right? That's right. And at the simplest level, that's what is required.
There you are, Dr. Mathai, some inputs there in the form of comments and views from both Raman-san and Dr. Seshu. Standardization. So I think that would help you in terms of formulating the overall broad contours of standards. So, but I believe at ARA also you are enhancing your facilities, right? Your capabilities in terms of not only connected vehicles but some of the other megatrends also, right?
Yeah, because we are speaking about it. So let me just speak about this connected vehicles part, because the vehicle 2X, the V2X, what we call, and ADAS features. One of the key things that we are doing is the India-specific scenarios that we are capturing now. So there's a huge data bank being generated because we know that the scenarios are totally different. And as we have the necessary softwares or anything that can be adopted, we need this to be trained with the India-specific cases. So that is one area that we are doing in a very big way now, as of now. So this data generation is ongoing, and this data will be available to any industry partner, means as and when they require or as and when they want to implement the solutions at their end. So that is one thing. Then the functional safety part means on the functional side and the secured product development. In those both cases, we are now training our engineers so that they are on the level 1 and level 2, they are ready to certify and to see that we have equipped with those people who can certify that this is okay. So that part also we are now taking into action. That action is also being done. The software validation and the hardware validation, basically on the ISO 26262. This is a challenge that it will take some more time now. This is where we have the industry AIS needs to work a little more onto that and come to an understanding. And the threat analysis and risk assessment portion, again, there is substantial work is needed. So this is on to the part of this connected vehicle and this ADAS related areas. Other than that, the generic upgrade of facilities, yes, that is a continuous process. The huge activity, particularly related to the EV, that's a huge activity we are doing. The EMC chambers and all this, because how it interferes with the electronics part that is coming in. So those, again, there is substantial studies being done on it so that we are sure that whatever hardware we are putting in are protected or have the sufficient safety aspects embedded into it, and these are tested and certified. That part, yes, we are very clear on it. That is in place as of now.
And also another part in terms of challenge or maybe kind of a hurdle towards offering all connected features to its full potential is the availability of certain frequency bandwidth. Dr. Mathai, this is again not from this discussion, but having discussion with some other OEMs, some premium car OEMs, the fact that some of the frequency bandwidth is not available for civil use. It also limits the ability of certain vehicles to offer certain connected features, which also potentially can enhance the safety quotient of the vehicle and thereby contribute towards safer mobility. Is there any kind of discussions in that regard? In terms of,
I think the BIS has a panel on it, which is chaired by one of our previous directors itself. It is the ITS panel. I think they are working on it, and there are deliberations happening on this. And because, as you rightly mentioned, there is a struggle going on between the bandwidth, which are the bandwidth that the automotive sector can use and which should not be touched upon. But if somebody has already developed on it, that is where the problem is going to happen, how he adapts to the current system. But there is a team that works on it, and I think they are very close to bringing out certain aspects on these regulatory mechanisms to be put into place. That is there.
And I mean, thanks for sharing that update. I'm sure our industry representatives will really appreciate that. And Ashish, coming to you. Dr. Mathai also talked about the two-wheeler segment and how connected vehicle features are also being very well adopted there, though not being much talked about. But I think Visteon developed the first of its kind connected feature for an Indian OEM. So how do you see the progression of the connected vehicle megatrend and the adoption of those features in the two-wheeler space? Do you see that? Do you see good prospects there? And also in terms of the potential influence that you can have on the safety quotient?
Absolutely, yeah. So I think it is very true. It's the same set of users who like the mobile phone. So it's the two-wheeler consumers also want to have a similar experience. And what we are seeing is even the two-wheeler instrument cluster is there is a market demand to have the connected features on that. Now the question is what is the advantage that we see, right? So first of all, obviously the two-wheeler, the scale, the depth of penetration that we can achieve in being able to offer these connected features is just humongous, right? That's much more than a four-wheeler. The second is the way we have developed this solution where you have a conventional digital cluster and plus you have an add-on pod, which is a small gauge dial display that gives turn-by-turn indication, is able to help in navigation, for example, right? But then it's not just giving that feature, it is about designing the whole UI UX or the user experience around that so that the turn-by-turn indications are more intuitive. They are located and positioned in a way that they are very clearly perceivable by the driver in their peripheral vision. So they do not need to move their eyes here and there and focus or zoom in into the cluster. And then also there is connectivity. So there is like audio, there is video, there is all the signals, which is able to give much more improved experience to the users, right? So this is one such example, but then there are many other applications that we are now successfully able to move or port from the four-wheeler application into the two-wheeler application and deliver those safety features to the consumers. One more point I would like to add is there is also a challenge which is around delivering automotive level of clarity in the displays, whether it is for these small size two-wheeler turn-by-turn indicators or in the four-wheeler context, as we see the displays are becoming larger and larger, and all the sun load and other aspects, the usual challenges of automotive. So the display manufacturing or industrialization techniques is also a new thing that, or a new challenge, right? That we're trying to address, and there is a lot of success that we are seeing in how we can maintain that level of clarity. Like if you remember, for example, Apple, right? They kind of talked about this retina display, right? Which almost kind of was becoming like a brand equity, a brand type of thing. So I think that same demand is there in the automotive domain where you need to have larger displays or very small displays, but with all the environmental aspects of that.
In all conditions.
Exactly. The industrialization of displays is a very special expertise that is developing.
Okay. With that, we have reached the last leg of this session. To all attendees, if you wish to ask any questions to any of the esteemed panelists, please drop them soon on the chat box, and we will take it up. But last parting words from each one of you. Talking about connected vehicle technology and its and the very crucial requirement of bandwidth. Starting with you, Raman-san, you're talking about 5G. 5G is just around the corner. Should we look at what are the potential big benefits out of the 5G rollout on connected vehicle, or rather should we first get what we should fix certain basic issues, like as you said, standardization or the one number is?
Yeah, sure. I think both of them will go hand in hand, because one of the key issues, and I think the esteemed panelists did talk about, is about the data, how it is the data latency which is there, and that's something which we are finding a lot of issues in India too. And there are certain areas in India where you are not able to the signal is not there, and the data is lost. The customer still is looking for. Then also there is a latency issue of and so it takes time. I'm sure that the 5G is definitely going to help in a way where we can get better speeds, we can get bigger data numbers, we can get the rates will be much higher in terms of getting the data rates. Also, the capacity of number of devices which can be connected per square kilometer, that will increase. And as was pointed out, the now vehicle infotainment system is now, it's all about entertainment and about safety and about having smart usage in terms of maps or in terms of navigation, traffic management, and so on and so forth. So therefore, I think this is definitely going to be there. I do kind of sometimes worry one part that all of this displays what kind of driver distraction it brings about, with so many things to be taken care of. There was I think, and Dr. Bhagatullah would know this, that in Europe there was this driver distraction also was being talked about in a big way, because there's it is all related to safety. Certain times these systems need to not operate. I cannot change certain things on the infotainment panel when I'm driving. And so those kind of inbuilt features are required to be there. And I sometimes do worry about the amount of information which is now getting packed onto the infotainment system. There is a need which is there and everybody has needs, but then the driver distraction could be a huge issue. But of course, having said that, we need to find solutions for that.
Is right, exactly. As someone said, technology, while it may solve a big problem, sometimes could potentially create some new ones, but we have to strike a balance. On that note, gentlemen, we have run out of time. Thank you very much for sparing your valuable time and sharing your very valuable insights and thoughts on this very special panel discussion on improving safety and mobility through connected vehicle technology. Dr. Seshu Bhagatullah, Dr. Reji Mathai, Mr. C.V. Raman, Sagar Apte, and and Ashish Bhatia, thank you very much for sparing your time. And all ladies and gentlemen in the audience, thank you very much. Take care and stay safe, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.